Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Carefulist, the podcast. I'm Katie Christophic, founder of The Carefulist. Today, it is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber to the show. He has been a caregiver to his wife and written the book called My Two Elaines. Welcome to the show, Governor.
Katie, thank you. What a pleasure and honor for me to be with you. So thank you very, very much.
I am really excited about learning from you, and I think the audience will be as well, not just about your background, but about your caregiving journey. So, if you would give us a synopsis, if you will, of your career and then what led to your caregiving journey.
Well, thank you. Um, Gosh, I guess my whole career and so forth is wrapped up in my wife Elaine. And what happened was when I was a freshman in high school, I sat next to this beautiful, wonderful girl named Elaine, and I fell in love right away. And I knew that this was the person that I wanted to spend my life with, and so we dated and we got steady and we got engaged and we got married and 4 children, 13 grandchildren, now 12 great grandchildren, my friend, my advisor, everything that you could ever want in a life partner. And so that was the first Elaine. And her greatest tribute to me, to everyone in our family, was if I would run for political office, she would be the hardest working campaigner. And if I would lose, she would never let me feel defeated. And I
Yeah.
think for caregivers, that's so important for us to understand is we are going to lose things that will tear our heart out, but we can
Yeah.
never allow ourselves to feel defeated. We can never allow that to happen because there is always hope. There is always an opportunity to be able to do something that's going to make things better for a loved one, no matter how dire things might seem. But anyway, so that was the first Elaine. The second Elaine began to appear when she was maybe 63, 64 years of age. And she would get lost driving to and from places she had been going to and from for the last 10 years. And sometimes she would come up with stories that you can't tell me where they came from. I don't know. But also,
Yeah.
she was a great cook. And sometimes she would get her recipes messed up so badly that she would cry. So that was the beginning of the second Elaine. She passed away some now almost 3 years ago. And and so living with the disease for almost 20 years. And because of that experience, I became a caregiver, and I wrote a book, then My Two Elaines, Learning, Coping, and Surviving as an Alzheimer's Caregiver, and also have concluded that as there were my two Elaines, there's also two Martys. And I conclude that if you are a caregiver and your name is Mary, there has to be two Marys. If you're a caregiver and your name is George, there has to be two Georges. And so we can talk about that a little bit, Katie, as we move along.
I really appreciate the way that you framed that because conversations that I've had as a child of someone who had Alzheimer's disease, and we walked a very, very similar path to what you just described. Um, One of the things that we talk about as a common thread is that as a caregiver, you are not the same person after you've started care and through the care journey that you were before whatever visited you, the accident, the illness, what have you.
I call it a compassionate transition. And
Oh, I like that.
I think about the first Marty, so to speak, with the Marty with the healthy wife, um, completely different than Marty the caregiver. And
Hmm.
to give you an example, so when Elaine was first diagnosed, the doctor said there were four things that we should be doing: Numenda and Aricept to delay the symptoms, socialization, very important, walking, the best exercise for the brain, and then also a glass of red wine every evening. Well, Elaine got 4 weeks ahead with the glass of red wine every evening and 3 weeks behind with the walking. But so Marty, the first Marty, walking. What is a walk? A walk is a half an hour, 15 minutes that way, 15 minutes back. That's the walk. So Marty, the first Marty's walking with his wife Elaine, and Elaine said, "Look at that beautiful flower." Well, come on, we have to walk. We have to get this walk in. Or do you hear the bird? No, we have to get this walk in. So Marty, the caregiver, understand that it's the now that is important, and it's
Yes.
not necessarily the anticipation or what might lie ahead. And so Marty, the caregiver, understands that there can be moments of joy along this journey, as difficult as it is, and to go for a walk and to have your loved one say, "Let's look at that beautiful flower," and to stop and look at the flower, or to appreciate, the singing of a bird. And so also the first Marty is arrogant and self-centered, and sometimes stupid, in thinking that I could do it alone. The
Mm,
second Marty understands that to ask for help means you're not giving up. To ask for help is a matter of courage. To ask for help is really showing the kind of love, not only to the person on the Alzheimer's journey, but to friends and children and grandchildren as well, because to know that to understand that to be a caregiver is such a challenging kind of experience in so many ways, but then to understand that yes, it's very appropriate to have people join you on that journey, so that your loved one can live their best life possible.
yes. And I appreciate that you touched on the importance of finding joy because it is such a difficult path as a caregiver. It can be very, pardon me, very easy to focus on tasks and the things that are hard and difficult. And finding those flowers on the path or listening to the birds is a way of grounding yourself and bringing you back to the now, which you mentioned as well. It's so important. Um, I'm curious if you have any other examples of joy, because I know it's something that people struggle with.
Well, so when Elaine was in assisted living memory care, we're having lunch one day, and she began to cry. And I said, "Elaine,
Mhm.
why are you crying?" Well, she said, she looked at me, she said, "I'm beginning to love you more than my husband." Well, let me tell you, I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband, but here is what that meant to me. What that meant to, well, first of all, we want to back up a moment. We know that we, for all practical purposes, cannot cure this disease at this moment in time. We
Yeah.
also know that it's not preventable. And so what we can do is get a diagnosis of this disease, and we can give up, we can feel defeated, or we can do something which is realizable and which is something we can take comfort in, and we can make a determination to help our loved one live their best life possible. How do we help them live their best life possible? We do that by joining their world. And as long as I kept on trying to drag Elaine back into my world. It didn't happen on a Thursday. It happened on a Friday. Elaine, it wasn't the Smiths, it wasn't the Joneses. Elaine, why are you asking me these same questions? I told you seven. Why'd you put the car keys? And so forth. Well,
Mhm.
so my goal then is to help my loved one live their best possible life. So Elaine asked me or told me that she's beginning to love me more than her husband. What is my goal? Well, my goal is not to have her win any kind of an award on recognition. Uh, Part of helping my loved one live her best life possible life, or her best possible, is by having our hearts and souls touch. And so
Yes.
hearts and souls can touch by holding a hand, by giving a hug, by sharing a smile, by singing a song together, by just being together. And so it was not necessary for Elaine to know my name in order for hearts to touch. And you and I both will acknowledge how painful it is when our loved one no longer remembers our name. But we have to understand that's not what is important. What is
Right.
important is the matter of hearts touching. And the poetess said, I may not remember what you said. I may not remember what you did, but I will always remember how you made me feel. And so
Yes.
many times people say, well, it doesn't do any good for me to visit so and so because they don't know who I am anyway. I don't think that's true. I think that they may not know the name, but they certainly may know that hearts are touching, and that
Hmm.
can just make such a difference in helping our loved one live their best life possible.
Yes. Yes. My mom lost her ability to speak 4 or 5 years before she passed. And so it was an added layer of difficulty in communication. And when she couldn't speak, obviously there were no names or anything like that. But if you walked into a room and in her line of vision, her face would light up. There was a form of recognition there. And my both of my kids and my nieces and nephew, they were all very young while we were going through this, because my mom was also in her early 60s when she started. Um, and my son was the youngest of all of them. And so we were talking one day about, they called her Gaga, about how Gaga responds or sometimes doesn't respond to them. And excuse me, the way they know love. And, from the mouths of babes, he was maybe 3 or 4. He said, I know she can't talk to me, but that's okay. I know she loves me by the way she looks at me.
That's very special. That's just very
Yes.
and from the mouth of babes, that's even me as old as I am, that has a extremely important resonating sound. So yeah, we may not. Well, again, I may not remember what you said or did, but I always remember how you made me feel, and to
Yeah.
your son as well.
Yes. Yes. I am very grateful that he was able to pick up on that. Because unfortunately, they did miss out on having the grandma I know she certainly envisioned being able to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. So while you were caregiving, you mentioned in your description of two different Martys, the first version would be you categorized it as arrogant in not accepting help and trying to do everything on your own. So when you eased into the second version of yourself and allowed people to start helping, what was one thing, or you can name several, that people did that you found very helpful?
One of the things that I want to share with caregivers is the fact that we're sort of a unique brand. And so many times people would say, well, call me if you need help. Well, caregivers don't do that. At least
Yep.
my experience with caregivers has been that way. But for someone to say, well, I'll come and drop something off for dinner, or let me come and I'll stay a little bit with Elaine, or let me go to the drugstore and pick up the medications for you, and so forth. One of the things that makes caregiving so difficult with everything else, and that is this is not Alzheimer's is not what you call a chicken casserole disease. So hypothetically speaking, if I have open heart surgery and I'm recovering, people will bring me chicken casserole. I have
Yeah.
hip surgery and I'm recovering, people bring me chicken casserole. Now my wife has Alzheimer's. Because people are ignorant of the disease, they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, and they stay away. And
Yes.
because they stay away, now my journey is even more lonely. And sometimes to feel deserted by friends of 25, 30 years because nobody calls and nobody comes to offer assistance. And so sometimes to help a caregiver, sometimes to help a caregiver is just simply acknowledging and saying, yes, I understand that you are on a very difficult and a very challenging journey. Oh my gosh, how important it is for a caregiver to know that there are people who have that kind of understanding and compassion for
Yes.
what is happening. Now, I contend if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. And when I say ignorance of the disease, I mean ignorance of the disease by the medical profession who doesn't
Yes.
understand that there's two patients. There's a person with Alzheimer's, and then there is the caregiver. Katie, 40% of all caregivers die before their loved one due to stress related illness. 40%. And so, we said if we can help our loved one live their best life possible, well, that includes the caregiver living their best life possible.
Mhm.
Because, well, my children had an intervention with me, and they say, Dad, if you don't do something, you're going to be dead before mom, and we don't want to lose both parents. And
Right.
so, what I began to understand is, yes, I am a caregiver for my wonderful, beautiful wife, Elaine, on this journey. But I'm also a father and a grandfather. I'm also a friend and a neighbor. And also, I have to then understand that in my multi-dimension is best served by keeping myself healthy and making sure that I eat right and making sure I get my exercise and make sure that I get my respite time and so on and all of the things that we should be doing to live a normal life are put under a microscope and re-emphasized in the life of a caregiver because
Mhm.
the emotions of depression and anxiety and worry and unacknowledged grieving, all of those things are batting against the heart and soul and life of a caregiver. And so we have to be as strong as we can be. And we can be as strong as we can be by taking care of ourselves and by not being afraid to ask for help because we owe it to our loved one. So I wrote this book, My Two Elaines, and before I go to print with this book, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping during since her diagnosis. And
Wow.
so I want you to know that we had prayed together and we had cried together, but never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this illness and go forward because she wrote about that. But also never did I understand how much she depended upon me as her lifeline. And so my heart is aching because my wife is leaving me a little bit every day. I don't know what to do. But then what I'm also doing, and because I don't know what to do, I am not taking care of myself. And the very lifeline that she is being dependent upon, I'm gnawing away at. So maybe becoming useless because I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not eating right. I'm drinking too much. I'm doing all the things that are harmful to me wanting to help my wife live her best possible life. And so what I did in writing the book, before I went to press, I found these notes and journals. So every chapter of my book begins with some of Elaine's notes. So the reader can get a firsthand understanding of what it's like as a person living with Alzheimer's, what their life is sort of like in their thought process and how they're handling and dealing with things. And so to have had that better understanding of what Elaine was going through just really helped me better understand the importance of me as her caregiver and thereby taking care of myself.
Yes. And I would imagine that is a multifaceted gift. You have her thoughts and her emotions for her children and her grandchildren to understand, but you've also then shared it with the rest of us so that we can help to educate ourselves and understand. Because I think one of the things that gets lost when there is a dementia diagnosis, your experience and my experience were both Alzheimer's, but a dementia diagnosis in general, people stop talking to the person with the illness and they talk about them in front of them. And so I often thought, especially once my mom lost her ability to communicate, I often thought about, she can hear us, she can see us. What is it that she's processing and she can't say? Does her nose itch? And unfortunately for my mom, she eventually lost her ability to move pretty much from the neck down. So, then it comes with those added layers of, is she comfortable? There's no way to know because she can't move, so she's not squirming. So, what do we do? But in those early days, it it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Eye-opening for sure, but in a way, it would also be comforting to see what she would have thought and to know a little bit better about what she was experiencing. Um, my mom's experience was very, very similar to your wife, not just with age, but she was also a very good cook. And I distinctly remember we were all there for Thanksgiving, and the turkey did not come out the way it always did, like clockwork. And she was so upset. And she was saying, I looked at the recipe, I followed the recipe, and my sister and I just kind of looked at each other like, you have not looked at a recipe since I don't even remember you looking at a recipe for anything. So the fact that she needed one and then was having trouble following the steps, that was to me, one of our first really big clues. Something was very wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, those are things, and and then what all I can say is that as you describe what you described, and I know that your viewers and we all understand what that journey is like, and how painful that is, and then how do you react to that, and to
Mhm.
try and just try and deal with that kind of situation. As that when you talk as you did, it just brings back so many memories that it's even hard to put into words the kind of emotions that I feel when I think about those kinds of experiences with Elaine, and it's exasperation. I
Mm.
don't know exactly how to how to describe it. And so there again, you know, helping our loved one live their best life possible. When Elaine would mess up her recipes, that's why, no, it's really good, or, we know you did your best, or redirection, and, trying to go off in another way to help our loved one, make a transition
Yeah,
on that journey.
yeah. And those transitions are so important. I remember my dad was her primary caregiver, and he was a science teacher as his vocation. So um, he naturally sort of thought of different ways to engage her around the house. He set up activity centers for whatever, for her to just keep her hands busy because that was always a challenge. If her hands weren't busy, they were getting into something they may not have, been a very good idea. So he did that. And one of the things he talked about was the idea of, what's the word I'm looking for? Guiding her or directing her. And transitioning is really what got me thinking about it. Transitioning her to the next thing. It's like lovingly steering her from one thing to the next to try to mitigate some of that frustration.
Well, God bless your dad, because he was on top of things. Is he doing okay? I hope. Is he?
He is, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So redirection. I can remember, Elaine. Just wanted took great pride in her home and so forth, and we would spend time as a great cook chopping celery. We chopped a lot of celery. Folding up towels. We would fold up towels. I would take
Yes.
the towels into another room, shake them out, and roll up towels again. But the idea is to to join the world of the person who now is, and to
Mhm.
understand, that it's the moment for now. And so, it's the folding of the towels, the chopping of the celery, playing games without any rules and so forth. It was just,
Yeah.
and singing of songs, music. We have to underscore how important music is in
Yes.
the life of a person living with Alzheimer's. And we listen a lot to Patsy Cline, and we sang a lot of old church songs together, and so on. But again, it's the now moment that really makes the difference. I share what I call well, I, so Elaine asked me once how are my parents? So I said they're both dead. No, they're not. She said, yes. So it was sort of a bit of an argument as to when she finally realized that her parents were dead, that maybe she didn't go to the funeral, that she wasn't there in her parents' last days or hours. I promised myself I would never put her through that again.
Yes.
And so the next time she asked, how are my parents? Oh, I said, they're doing great. I said, your mom likes working at church. Your dad likes his sports. And oh, Elaine said, that makes me feel so happy. That makes me feel so happy. Well, I call that therapeutic fibbing. So
Yes.
therapeutic fibbing. But there's two things that you should know about therapeutic fibbing. One is that I tried it the first year of marriage,
Mhm.
and it didn't turn out so good. But then also the second thing about therapeutic fibbing, and here's and Katie, I want you to know, not everybody believes me on what I'm going to tell you. Not everyone believes me. But do you remember learning about or hearing about Moses and the Ten Commandments and Mount
Yes.
Sinai?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was there and I helped Moses. Okay, and so I want you to first thing, if you help Moses with the Ten Commandments from Mount Sinai, don't call him Mo. He absolutely hates to be called Mo. But anyway, so I said, Moses, how are we going to get these tablets? Well, he said, we're going to work and pray. So we got these great big tablets all the way from the top of the mountain, all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. And I look and hear written in some Arabic Hebrew, I couldn't read it. I said, what is that? Moses, that's the Ten Commandments. I said, bearing false witness against the neighbor, lying, is that? Yeah, he said, that's in there. I thought, my goodness, what's going to happen to therapeutic fibbing? Because that's so important. Well, I
Mm.
walked around, Kitty, to the backside of these big tablets of stone, and here written in American English were the words, therapeutic fibbing is good. Go, therefore, and therapeutic fib with your loved one having the journey of Alzheimer's. And so people should feel very comfortable
Yeah.
therapeutic fibbing because it says on the opposite side of the Ten Commandments that therapeutic fibbing is all right. Under the heading of joining their world, under the heading of we can't do anything with this disease that's not curable or preventable for all practical purposes, what we can do is help our loved one live their best life possible. And
Yes.
therein lies the moment of joy that we can look for and realize every once in a while.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found out, a couple of things on this journey, and that's this whole thing of grieving. So I had a friend, he was in his late 70s, and really everything good in his life, but he has a massive heart attack and he died, and
Oh,
sort of a snap of a
I'm
finger
sorry.
and gone. Well, there was a funeral, and people came by and expressed their condolences, and there was closure. There was closure. An Alzheimer's caregiver never gets closure. We see our loved one leave us a little bit every day. And because of that, sometimes we don't know that we're grieving. It's anticipatory grief, some say. It's unacknowledged grieving, is my sort of description of it. But we caregivers have to understand all of the various emotions that we are experiencing so that we can deal with them. And why am I feeling so horrible? Well, one of the reasons is I'm losing my loved one, and I'm grieving, and you know what, I'm also feeling sad, and I'm depressed, and also worried about what the future might be. So I also have that anxiety, and I know that as hard as I work today, tomorrow it's not going to get any better, maybe worse. And so to be a caregiver is to understand that there are so many deep-seated human emotions that come to the forefront, and you are going to feel bad. How can any human being not feel bad? And you are going to feel worried, and you are going to feel concerned, frustrated, angry, on the guilt. People
Yes.
come and say, "Oh my, I got angry. I was so sad. I got angry with my wife or my husband, and so forth." So there's that guilt. So what caregivers have to under. So uh, if I mentioned 40% of caregivers die before their loved one due to stress-related illness, we can understand why. And
Yeah.
so ask for help means you're not giving up. To ask for help is a matter of courage. To ask for help is a showing of immense love to the person living with Alzheimer's and to the family and friends, your children and your grandchildren, that you're showing love towards them by asking for help to help our loved one live their best life possible, but also so we have the ability to help our loved one live their best life possible.
Yes. I was so interested and invested in what you were saying. I kind of just forgot that we were having a conversation. I was just listening to you.
Well, that's the worst thing. That's not the worst thing you could do is listen to me.
No, no, it's fantastic. And you were saying so many things that were very familiar and, you know, blow for blow, really, our journey. And the grief, I did not know the phrase anticipatory grief until after my mom had passed. And I talk about it as much as I can, especially with folks who are going through the dementia process, because I didn't realize that what I was feeling was grief. I just sort of thought, I'm kind of losing it here. What is going on with me? You know, working full time and raising your own small kids and dealing with all of that, it was kind of hard to pinpoint for a little while what really is going on and triggering these feelings. Is it being a new mom and trying to adjust to that? And that was part of it, but also not having my own mom to be able to lean on through that process was really hard. And if I had the time and the rest to have clarity of mind, I probably would have come to the conclusion that it was grief a whole lot faster.
Well, and that's maybe why what you are doing is so important because you're helping people who don't have that time and who don't have that rest to become more aware of the different emotions and so forth that they're feeling. One thing I also learned, so it's my wife, okay, that is ill,
Mhm.
living with Alzheimer's. And so we talked about grieving, but also what I learned to understand is that everyone handles grief their own way. And I
Yes.
have no right to dictate to my children, to any of my children, to my either of four of my children or to grandchildren, friends. I have no right to dictate how they handle grief. And
Mhm.
everyone handles it their own way. I know that my children would die for me, would have died for Elaine, but each of them had a different way of dealing with the fact that their mom was leaving them a little bit every day. And once I understood that I need to acknowledge their grieving as it relates to how they themselves handle it. Once I understood that, that made a big difference. I didn't have to worry about that. I can only
Mhm.
should have worried about what I myself was confronting. One of the things that uh, also caregivers have a difficult challenge with, and that is getting to the point where we realize we no longer can help our loved one in our own home.
Yeah.
And as I said, we had an intervention. My children told me, Dad, if you don't do something, you're going to be dead before mom. So I'm going to counseling. And it took me a while to admit I needed a counselor, but thank God I did. And anyone who is listening, please understand you cannot, should not do it by yourself. To ask for help is a sign of courage and a sign of love to the person living with Alzheimer's, as also to
Mhm.
the family. But anyway, so I go to counseling and I say to the counselor, I just cannot see putting Elaine into a nursing home, putting
Hmm.
the word. And she said, you're not putting Elaine anyplace. You're giving her a chance to be who she is now. And so that sort of hit me like a shot aside the head. And
Yeah.
what happened was, as a caregiver, I got so wrapped up sometimes thinking it's about me. It's about me and my fight against Alzheimer's. Well, it's not about me and my fight against Alzheimer's. What it is, it's about me and helping my loved one live their best life possible. And so
Hmm.
the counselor said, "Can Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home take care of her?" Well, the answer was no. I wasn't getting enough sleep because I was sleeping at the door at night for fear she'd go outside into traffic. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't getting enough exercise. I wasn't visiting with friends. I was drinking too much. I was doing all of the things that a person who has true love should not be doing. And so I then began to understand that that's my goal, is to help Elaine be who she is now. And so that made the transition so much easier. And again, add some more guilt to it all, guilty Marty, because he was just worried about and he should have been concerned about. So we learn these things and we move on and I just know that there's a forgiving God there, and we did our best. And so sometimes that's a great comfort into knowing that at least we did our best with what we knew at the time.
Yes. Yes. And in hindsight, one of the things that I've realized that I wish I had thought about before is none of us have ever done today. Every day is something new that we have never done. So it's going to throw something at you that you have never had to navigate, specifically if you're dealing with dementia.
Well, and that's part of where this whole anxiety and guilt, I think stem from, because
Hmm.
I can remember finally the end of the day, we survived the end of the day. Oh, thank God. And you wake up the next morning and the disease moved forward. Now,
Yeah.
what am I doing wrong? What should I have done differently? I shouldn't have lost my temper. Now, and is this what's going to be? And so you are right. And so we caregivers have to know and understand that this is a challenge, and things are going to happen differently than what we ever would have wanted them to do. But there again, it's sort of like I read once where it's rather than worrying about the storm to pass, to try and learn how to dance in the rain. Or
Mm,
another way of saying it is things are going to happen that we don't like, and we can either revolt and complain, or we can step back, understand what is, and then do our best with that situation. And
yes.
so, yes, it's a horrible diagnosis. Yes, it can't be cured or prevented at this moment in time. But yes, there are some things that we can do. And to set our minds forward in that direction is something that we can take comfort in, and always look back with comfort, because we know we did our best understanding. And so if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. If we can better understand, and I'm not talking about the amyloids working and so forth. I'm
Mm,
just talking about dealing with this disease one-on-one.
yeah.
And so in many ways, I felt lucky because I could love two Elaines. I could
Yeah.
show the kind of care and compassion to two different people, and at the same time, the same person. And with all she did for me, um, in a way, maybe a blessing that I had that opportunity to be of help to her.
Yeah. Well, it is such a testament to the relationship that the two of you had, the way that you approached her care and the way that you did take care of her. It parallels my family so much. I can't tell you.
Mhm.
My parents met in first grade.
Oh my.
And they began dating in high school, and engagement and marriage and all of that followed suit. So they were together for a very long time. Um, and one of the things I remember my dad saying was realizing and getting to the point of realizing that expectations needed a serious adjustment. So his goal, partway through their particular journey that lasted 15-ish years, um, was to make her smile every day,
Hmm.
because that was one of the very last things that they lose the ability to do. So if he can have her do that every day, it reduces, it does not eliminate, and some days are better than others, but it reduces the level of disappointment and guilt as you're traveling through all of the other phases of the illness.
Um, Music and laughter. Uh, that's another thing. You looked at it with your dad being, understanding that importance for laughter, for smiling, but also, and I'm going to look at this word here, because I just sort of learned it. It is unpacking. Anhedonia. Anhedonia is a medical term, meaning the lack of ability to feel. And so
Ah,
many times when I give my presentations and I try and bring humor into it, but after the presentation, people come up to me and they said, I haven't laughed. I can't remember the last time I laughed. And
yeah,
and so we talked about caregivers and dealing with the anticipatory grief and the anxiety, depression, and so forth. There's also the fact that we become so closed in with our emotions that we forget how to laugh,
yes,
and we almost become numb to emotions. And so I mentioned that to not point out not only how important it is what your dad did, but also for caregivers to understand that they too have to laugh. They too
yes,
have to try and figure out how they can get a laugh a day at least, if it's possible, because it's sort of that emotional kind of outlet which makes such a big difference in the kinds of feelings and emotions. I can remember having I had a mentor, and I called him up once. I said, "Did you ever just feel like screaming?" He said, "Not only did I just feel like," he said, "I actually screamed." And and so that sort of was humorous in a way. I did, sort of understand then, yeah, I'm sort of human because somebody else did it who I respected and admired. But then also to be able to look at situations and to try and find humor in it. It may be macabre kind of humor, it may be dark kind of humor, but the fact is that we have to understand again those emotions, the need for outlet of emotions, whether it's crying, it's grieving, or laughing. Uh, so I guess I just summarized by saying, Katie, what you're doing is so important, helping caregivers learn, cope, and survive. And I thank you for that because I know what the journey is like.
thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate that. But this has been healing for me to be able to talk with other caregivers and hear their stories and realize so much of it is similar. And that's the key, because when you are caregiving, you feel like, and for a number of reasons, you feel like you are the only one going through it. And it is so isolating. And just being able to talk to one other person who understands, it's like somebody turned the light on in the room.
Hmm. Hmm. And so I mentioned Moses and so forth, but
Mhm.
I can remember from Sunday school there was the story about rich man and Lazarus. Okay, well, I think I got the characters right, but there was the rich man who was living high on the hog and so forth, and then there was the poor man Lazarus, and he was struggling to even have food. and he ate the food that the dogs ate and so forth. Well, what happened was the rich man died, and now he's down in heaven, and I mean down in hell, and he talks to Lazarus, and he says, if you could just, the rich man says, just dip your tongue in water and put it, I mean, if you could just dip your finger in water and put it on my tongue, I would be so grateful. And so that may be an over dramatization, but Katie, what you said, just when people would acknowledge to me, I understand what you're going through. Just that in and of itself. And as you mentioned, just in and of itself to understand that as a caregiver, these emotions that I'm feeling are normal and I'm not the only one who feels that way. And I don't have to have that guilt and so on. And so
Yeah.
again, you're just dipping your finger in water and putting it on someone's tongue just to make them feel better. As simple of a thing that is, it is so very important.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister, well, my husband, of course, was an unbelievable support throughout everything. My sister and I um, were able to share humor in the situation. And so, something would happen if one was calling the other or whatever, we would share a story and have a laugh. But there was one time we were visiting, and my great aunt also had dementia. So we had two folks with dementia at the same time for a while. And it was her birthday. And so we were singing happy birthday, and the little kids, all the grandchildren were around and singing. And my mom knew it was a joyous, happy occasion, and she wanted to participate. And at the end of the song, when everybody said happy birthday, she said, Merry Christmas.
Hooray!
And everybody laughed. She knew, you could tell by her face, she knew it wasn't the right word, but she felt the sentiment of the moment. And
Yeah,
so now it's kind of a running joke in the family that, inopportune times, we'll just say Merry Christmas.
yeah. That's good to have those positive kind of memories
Yeah.
while on that journey. So,
So, for folks who are interested in reading your book, My Two Elaines, which for everyone who's listening, I strongly encourage you to. Um, it's very well written, very thought provoking, and having Elaine's first person perspective is incredibly different from any of the other books about the Alzheimer's journey that I've seen. Where can they find your book if they want to purchase it?
well, thank you. We have a website, my2elaines.com, all one word, my2elaines. And so I believe you can order it through there, or Amazon has it. Barnes and Noble can order it for you if they don't have it in stock. But I thank you for that. Uh, what happened is, Katie, this has become my life as it relates to a mission of helping caregivers learn, cope, and survive. And so I'm now approaching, by the way, 1,000 presentations through personal visits. I
Wow.
talk with nursing students, with social
Oh,
worker
that's so
students,
important.
with medical students, libraries, church groups, and trying to do my best in helping not only the caregivers, but also, for example, church communities. And again, getting back to what we talked about, not being a chicken casserole disease, having more people better understand this disease. And
Yeah.
so if people would read the book and they feel it helps them, that gives me great comfort. That gives me great comfort.
Well, I truly appreciate you taking time to share your story with us and for writing your story so eloquently and so interestingly. Um, the love you have for your wife is palpable. And I appreciate that you share her with us. And I am very sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you for that. I am also sorry for your loss.
Oh,
I
thank you.
admire so much what you're doing. I want you to tell your dad hello.
I will.
as a fellow caregiver, and that I would admire all of the things that he did on this journey, and also that because of that, the two of you can share and help other people in a special way. Because I know it's different to be a caregiver as a spouse than to be a caregiver as a son or a daughter.
Mhm.
And I do know those emotions that one of the things that I when I first came out with the book and I would be giving presentations, I got a question, how did your children handle it? And I wrote the book only from my standpoint, and it just again, it's one of those things where it's like a side of the, uh, a hit on the side of the head. I didn't really sit down with my children and say, "How are you doing?" I mean, we were together, but I never really, "How are you doing?" And so, yeah, I made an addendum to the book called "Conversations from the Road," where each of my children then had an opportunity to sort of share with others what it's like and what it's going through. And so again, I want to get back and salute what you are doing, and with the background that you had with your dad being as great as he was as a caregiver, a lot to share and a lot of people you can help. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And for everyone who is listening at home, on the road, or wherever you are, thank you for joining us. You can get more resources on our website, carefulist.com. And until next time, take care.